The topic is this. This was book number 2 that Srila Prabhupada published, or that he wrote, and didn't get published till much later. We're going to hear the story of Light of the Bhagavata, and I'll give you 2 reasons why I chose to speak on this topic instead of the other topic. The person who was responsible for having this book published was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. The book was written in 1962. 23 years later, they found the book. It was unpublished. And the BBT found the book. They gave it to Tamal Krishna Maharaj because she was the GBC for China at the time, living in Hong Kong. And in less than a year, he had the book published in Chinese. The text was written in English. So because this was for the intended audience at the beginning, in 1962, was for a conference that was going to be held in Japan, in Tokyo. So Prabhupada, you'll hear as we go forward, but he was addressing the Eastern Asian, Far East Asian mindset. That was his audience, intended audience, so he knew how to make subject matters relatable to different audiences, and so that's what he did. And so when the book manuscript was found, the unpublished manuscript was found, it was given to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he had it published. So, because I visit China, I spent some time. I gave a full, so many part seminar on the entire Light of the Bhagavata for the Chinese devotees, and I'm going to be doing the same in Houston, because Houston has the mark of Tamal Krishna Maharaj all over it. I mean Texas, because he was GBC in Texas, and many of the devotees there, the older devotees, are his disciples. And so the Thanksgiving weekend, I'll say it at the end because there's more people will come fashionably late, I guess. If you're interested in hearing more about the Light of the Bhagavata, and enough to attend a Thanksgiving seminar, a 16-part seminar over the Thanksgiving weekend. This is just the introduction to the book. So there's the opening slide. On the right side is an image of the cover. This is the same cover shown. There's many different versions of this cover. And this is the story of the journey that Prabhupada took leading up to his creating Light of the Bhagavata. And there's lots and lots of details that if you like reading Lilamrita, Prabhupada's biography, you'll find in Lilamrita. So I'm not going to cover all those details, but some highlights. In 1952, Srila Prabhupada was a householder. Here's a photograph of his family. He's sitting next to his father, and to his father's left, or to our right, his mother, Gaur Mohan Dey, and his mother, and 4 children, 2 small children, his children, Prabhupada's children, and his wife by his shoulder, and his 2 older sons standing behind his father and mother. So Prabhupada's spiritual inclinations didn't match his wife's. And he was tolerant and gently, ever so gently trying to encourage her, but it wasn't going well. And at a certain point, in an act of defiance or disrespect or whatever, she took the Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam Now, I don't know if it was a one-volume or multi-volume. Probably, my guess is it was just the verses in the Bhagavatam, and she sold it so that she could buy some tea biscuits. I don't even know what a tea biscuit is, but she bought tea biscuits, and that was it. So with that, in 1954, at the age of 59, Srila Prabhupada left his family life and entered into the Vanaprastha stage. Now, as you see in the photo, his sons are old enough to manage the family business, and they could then maintain themselves and maintain his wife. In other words, it wasn't irresponsible. It was abrupt, but it wasn't irresponsible. It wasn't unknown to the family members that that's where things were headed. If you want to see the screen, could you come over this way? Then you can more easily, and besides, the fashionably late people will want to also see the screen. So come on over, thanks. Thanks a lot. So he was very determined. He was determined not just, to leave. He was determined to fulfill the instruction that his spiritual master initially gave him when they first met. That instruction was to preach the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the English-speaking parts of the world. So he was disappointed, but he just had to leave. And so he got on a train going, he didn't know exactly where. He got down at a place known as Jhargram, which is only a short train ride south of Calcutta, and doesn't say exactly in Lilamrita who he knew at that place, but he must have known somebody at that place, and his future was quite uncertain at that time. But he had a preaching mission, and he was determined to take shelter of that preaching mission and fulfill. Now there's many turns and twists that happened in the course of time. He went to Jhansi, one of the places he went to, because before 1954 he had visited there, and there were two ladies that had some property that was known as the Radha Memorial property, and they wanted to have him establish a temple at their property. So he began the effort. As you know, you see that sign, League of Devotees. He made there was something like the incorporation papers for ISKCON, but a formal document to establish the League of Devotees with a statement of purpose and the whole thing that you do when you want to legally organize yourself and do preaching work. 6-foot-high letters indicating what was the plan on this outside wall. But then they started doing some funny business. He could understand it was funny business. Funny business means they really didn't want to give the property. They wanted something instead of give the property. And there were some other people interested in the property, and it was tricky. And so he was quite disappointed. And so after that situation in Jhansi, he went to many places. He went to Navadvip, he went to Delhi, he moved finally to Mathura, where he had a deity of Lord Chaitanya. He went to Mathura because there in Mathura there was a sannyasi who was renowned sannyasi, Bhakti Pragya Keshava Maharaj, invited Prabhupada to come and assist him in editing the Gaudiya Patrika. This was a service that was given to him because of his intellectual skills. And he knew Prabhupada had writing skills, and so he wanted him to come to Mathura. So Prabhupada accepted the invitation. He went for some time and resided in Mathura with his Chaitanya Mahaprabhu deity. And then there was another person who lived not so far away in Delhi. Here's a painting of him, Bhakti Saranga Maharaj. He was in charge of the Harmonist, which was an English version of the Bengali Sajanatoshini. Both of these, Gaudiya Patrika and Sajanatoshini, these were instruments of Bhaktisiddhanta's missionary work. And Bhakti Saranga Maharaj invited Prabhupada to come and reside in the ashram and assist him in his work. So he went. He found the place was a mess. Things were not clean. The deity worship was not timely. The deity worship was also not clean. There was quarreling amongst the brahmacharis, and it was a mess. And he didn't stay there too long. He did some service, and as far as I understand it, he did continue his work remotely, but he was very focused on his mission. His mission was to establish the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in the English-speaking parts of the world. So while he was living in Delhi, it was he had nothing. He had nothing, and he endured. This is cut and paste from the Lamrita. He decided to revive because sometime earlier he had started Back to Godhead, which was like in the mood of Bhaktisiddhanta's writing. It's just the publication. Back to Godhead magazine. He didn't have any money, so he had to get subscriptions for Back to Godhead magazine. In winter's discomfort, he walked to the early morning streets of Delhi to visit Surendra Kumar Jain, the printer, to read the latest proofs. By walking, he saved money. He had no chadar, only a lightweight cotton jacket, and he wore rubber shoes. He also wore a cotton hat that covered his ears and tied beneath his chin, protecting him from the 40-degree wintry mornings and the sometimes gusty winds. Sanskrit Maharaj's writing skills are very nice. Summer came and the 110-degree heat made it almost intolerable to spend time out of doors. Hot, dust-laden winds blew in the city streets. Street-side hawkers closed their businesses during the day. In early May, during the 112-degree heat, a man collapsed in the street and died of heat stroke. But Abhay ignored the heat and ordinary limitations of the body. Now, remember, he's in his 60s already. And when you reach the 60s, your body doesn't function as well as it did in the earlier stages of life. But he was capable of great austerities. Mataji, can you see the screen over here? If you want to see the screen, you better sit over this side. If you don't want to see the screen, that's okay too. Okay. It's just one of those things. And there's details and details and details. In one point, Prabhupada passed out on the street. They didn't have a heat stroke, but he passed out on the street. He was gored by a cow, moving about here and there. It was difficult. It was difficult. So now we're in 1956, and in 1956 he left Delhi and he moved to Vrindavan. He moved to this little place called Vangshi Gopal Temple near Keshigat. Now, many of you know where Keshigat is, and those of you who've been to Vrindavan. Anybody here know where Keshigat is? A little idea. We're going to show you a map that shows where Keshigat is. It's near Keshigat. It's long, very close to the Jamuna River, this property. And we read in Prabhupada's writings, there's 5,000 temples, Krishna temples in Vrindavan. So this is one of them. Now, it's a temple. It was a temple, but it was actually a family's residence because it was the practice for people who had wealth that not only they would have a nice home, but they would have a Krishna deity. So this is one of those. It's like a home, nice home. And on the ground floor, you see the entrance. There's the archway to the entrance. Here's looking at it from the front side. There's the entrance to the property. It's just a home. And you walk up that little set of steps, and there's what you see inside. There's a little courtyard. In the courtyard, you see on the left, there's some arches. And on the arches, beyond the arches, there's the temple. There's the deities. So in front of the deities, there's a tulsi plant. There's a cow in the courtyard. A little calf in the courtyard. And then there's the temple. And there's Vangsi Gopal, Radha Vangsi Gopal deities. Nice deities. He's not holding his flute because they're making a food offering to him. So when you offer to Radha Krishna deities, you remove Krishna's flute when you're making your offerings. And it's very small deities, very sweet deities. And as you saw the dates, Prabhupada resided there for 6 years. And those 6 years, so he's in his mid-60s. And to get to his residence, there were 28 steps going up. There's one flight, there's another flight. And the room that he stayed in for those 6 years was quite humble. 17 feet by 9 feet for 6 years. They were a world acharya living in this space. It had no running water. It had no toilet. It had no kitchen. To use the toilet, he had to go downstairs. And to cook, he had a little, some kind of a heater, kerosene thing. And he did his cooking there. He went downstairs and offered to the deities downstairs. And the downstairs was where the family lived. The family was Mahant Gopal, with him and his children. And Prabhupada stayed on the second floor. And on the back side, you see that there's little doors on the right side of his room. Those doors lead to a terrace. And as you see behind the terrace, there's the river Jamuna. So it's very near the river Jamuna, near Keshigat. The place is still there. The deities are still there. Their family is gone, but their children are there. And here's looking from Prabhupada's quarters down into the entrance that leads into the home, Bhagavata Gopal Mandir. And there you see in the background, there's the river Jamuna. Here's a map that shows where the place is. Vangsi Gopal Temple is right in the center in that pink area. The Seva Kunj, which is not far. Anyway, this is a map of Nidhivan, Gopal Bhatta's temple, Radha Raman temple is in that same area towards the center. So very close. And while Prabhupada was living at the Vangsi Gopal temple, he developed a friendship, very close friendship with the leading Goswami. Goswami meaning, the senior priests of the heads of temples. The same, but starts with a V. Vishvambar Goswami. Vishvambar Goswami was the head priest of the Radharaman temple. That Vishvambar Goswami is the one that everyone respected. He was in charge of the installation ceremony for Krishna Balaram and Radha Shyama Sundar, right in the courtyard. He and Prabhupada had a very close friendship. He had great regard. So he, Vishvambar Goswami, had a relationship with the head Goswami of the Radha Damodar temple, and he persuaded the man in charge of the Radha Damodar temple to invite Prabhupada to stay in the rooms that Prabhupada then shifted from the Vangsi Gopal temple to this very celebrated place, that not just because it's Radha Damodar, but the courtyard where Rupa Goswami's Bhajan Kutir and Samadhi are. A very auspicious place with nice deity worship, etc. So that happened after some time. So you saw his room where he stayed for these 6 years that he was living at this place. He would travel back and forth to Vrindavan, to Delhi, and to other cities also. There was a period of time where he would, because he didn't have any place to stay in Delhi, he would take a train from Vrindavan to Delhi, which takes some time, and he would stay and he had to go back at night. And he had very little money. But his purpose was subscriptions for Back to Godhead magazine. And many efforts, dead ends in many cases, lots of austerity, not just age and temperature and no money, but just things weren't working so well. But he didn't become discouraged. During this period of time, while he was at Vangsi Gopal temple, he was also continuing to help Keshava Maharaj. Keshava Maharaj became his sannyas guru, because Keshava Maharaj kept insisting that in order to fulfill the mission that Bhaktisiddhanta gave you, you should take sannyas. You should be a sannyasi. He was already in its Vanaprastha stage, and so this is this photograph during Prabhupada's sannyas initiation. Keshava Maharaj is sitting. There's another godbrother who also received sannyas initiation. So Keshava Maharaj became his sannyas guru. And a very a prolific person. Many of his things, he was fluent in English, so many of his things, many of his writings are available, and he a very, very erudite person. In time, so now we're at 62, and July 62, this invitation came to stay at the Radha Damodar temple. Prabhupada looked at the rooms. Now it's a busy place. Then it wasn't a busy place. The rooms were dilapidated. They hadn't been occupied by anyone in long time. They were run down, beat up, and so Prabhupada made an arrangement with the Goswami in charge of that temple that he would pay 5 rupees a month, for not only for his life but after his life. So he was going to invest some money to fix it up, so to make it habitable, and electricity and so forth. And so that was agreed. There's a document that was in writing, and it's been a point of controversy since, but there's a document that's being honored, and so it's still Prabhupada's rooms. And there you see one room that's on the upper right. That's where he would do his study and his writing, etc., with kerosene lamps, because electricity would go out regularly in Vrindavan, even with electricity. And the other little room, very small rooms, on the left side, on the lower left, that's Prabhupada bringing the devotees to show him where he stayed when he was in Vrindavan. And on the right side, that's where he would do his cooking, make his offering, and take his meal. And looking out the window, if you sit at that little table, he could see from his window the Bhajan Kutir and the Samadhis of Rupa Goswami. I mean, there's a very esoteric description that he was feeling discouraged at some point, and Rupa Goswami came to him and encouraged him. Please continue. You'll be successful. Personal darshan of Rupa Goswami. Pretty amazing. So during this period of time, some of it is while he was still at the Vangsi Gopal temple, and now he's moved to the Radha Damodar temple, he was translating his Srimad Bhagavatam. So his regular writing work was Back to Godhead magazine, assisting with the work of Kesha Maharaj with his Gaudiya Patrika. But the main work, of course, was Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, he didn't have any money, so why are you going to publish something if you don't have any money? This is from the Lamrita. This was his real purpose. To prepare the books he would distribute to the people of the West. That was the mandate and his mission. Although as yet he had no means for traveling even as far as Japan, and no means for printing books, these were the goals for which he worked. He had not come to Vrindavan to die and return to Godhead. Rather, he had come because it was the ideal place to gain spiritual strength for his main life's work. So think about it. You're in the 60s, and you're not going to go there to leave your body and go back to Godhead. You're going to go there to get spiritual strength, to do your mission of worldwide giving of the message of Lord Chaitanya. That's our founder Acharya. So during this period of time, 1959, space travel to the moon and so forth, the U.S. and Russia competing who's going to get there first and all that. It was in the news all over the place. And so he took the theme of a current event, and in 1959, he wrote a 2-part article and published it in Back to Godhead magazine. There was an intellectual in Bombay from Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan who really liked it and encouraged Prabhupada to have it published as a book. So he did. In the fall of 1960, the first published book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. Now that's the cover image that came with the later printing. And so this project of book writing was part of Bhaktisiddhanta's work. It wasn't only Prabhupada. Others were very busy, engaged in writing. Here's, you see the image on the right side of Nishikant Sanyal. He was a senior professor at Ravenshaw College in Cuttack. And the book that you see on the left was something that went with the two sannyasis that were traveled to England to help establish Krishna consciousness, or the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The title of it is, as you see, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. It was all in English. Very comprehensive. Very, very authoritative, very comprehensive book. So Prabhupada had a similar idea, and in addition to the Sri Krishna Chaitanya book, Prabhupada's mission was the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it is a little bit about his schedule from the Lamrita. At 1 a.m., when no one else was up, and it was very quiet, Bhaktivedanta Swami would wake and begin writing. Since electric failures were not uncommon in Vrindavan, he would often work by lantern light. So this is when he began. In 1962, he published the first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, maybe you've seen the original or copies of the original. They make, it was offset printing, and all the letters are not straight across the page. It was, the technology of the time. Very thick paper, very coarse paper, but it was what was there. And so he gathered the funds somehow and published Volume 1 of Canto 1 Srimad Bhagavatam. So this year, 1962, was very fateful. In 63, it was Part 2. In 64, it was Part 3. Canto 1, Parts 1, 2, and 3 in 3 years. And then, it was 1965 that he left for America because he wanted to have that with him. And so he had some trunks with some books to bring with him on the... After this, it's some nice details. It's nice getting a picture of Prabhupada's life from the Lamrita because it's very well written. So when this Bharatiya Vidya person read the Back to Godhead magazine, he had lived in Bombay, and he read it and said, "This is very good." He invited Prabhupada to come. That man introduced Prabhupada to Sumati Maraji. He introduced him to somebody else who was wealthy, who was not going to help. He went to Sumati Maraji because she was a capable person, but also very devotional. And she very much appreciated Prabhupada's mood and his work. And later, of course, she was the one that gave passage in 65. So these are the dates of the Bhagavatam publication. Meanwhile, in Delhi, in January of 1961, the dates are important. In January of 1961, when he was visiting in Delhi, there was a gentleman in Delhi that gave him a flyer that he received somehow, and the flyer was advertising an event that was going to come up later that year. And the event was called the Congress for Cultivation of Human Spirit, which can mean anything or nothing. Congress for the Cultivation of Human Spirit. Because during this period of time, in the early 60s, sociologically and politically, there was kind of a pendulum swing, which means during World War II and for some years after World War II, everyone was nationalistic and locked down. They were just thinking about our country and protecting our country because who knows what's next. Very territorial, and visas weren't being issued, and like Prabhupada, when he applied for his visa to come to the U.S., it was one of the first visas because everything was locked down. So in 1961, there's a gentleman in Japan that was organizing this event, and Prabhupada got the flyer about the event. Those of you that are seated way over there since we paused, if you don't want to see the screen, you can just stay right where you are. But if you want to see the screen, let's do a little pause and come out over. There's nice front row seats over here. You don't have to. You can stay where you can't see what's on the screen.
Yeah, all the kids can come a little forward. Please come. Mata, come forward. Little more. And Mataji, you all can please somehow slide in or over new. Yes, come. Hare Krishna, you come forward, please. Come on. I can sit over here.
Look, we saved a space for you. It's got your name on it right there. Okay. So there you see in green, that's India. Over there in orange, that's Japan. And that's where the event was going to be in Tokyo. This Congress for the Cultivation of Human Spirit. And the mood was, the pendulum is now swinging in a direction. There are persons who were forward-thinking, not just liberal, they're just forward-thinking. People should come together and work together to build, a strengthening of the human relations and the human spirit. So euphemistic, but the idea was clear. So Prabhupada's meditation had been going to the West, but here was an invitation outside of India to go to Japan, so why not? And it would help him reach intellectuals, which he wanted to do, and present the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, which he had been working on, which would also be suitable for Oriental people. So he got an idea. It's a fantastic idea. His idea was that people from the Far East, they appreciate understanding lessons of life from nature. Yes? I'll say it again. They appreciate, it's true, lessons of life from nature. And so he thought, fantastic. What I'll do is I'll take 10th Canto, Chapter 20, which largely is just a description of the scene in Vrindavan just after the summer season, which is Chapter 19. It comes the rainy season. And then what comes after the rainy season is the fall season. And the verses after verses after verses describing scenes of nature. And then Prabhupada took those, he didn't exactly cut and paste the verses, but put in language that was drawing from what the verses are saying, giving a scene of nature and then giving lessons of life. And that's what the plan was for this 20,000 word, I forget the number of verses, 40, 45, 46, something like that. He called them chapters. That makes up this book. So this was an idea. He didn't write the book yet. In January, Prabhupada wrote a letter to the organizer of this event. Here's from the letter. This was found in a trunk later, along with the manuscript which he wrote, and the answer to that the man wrote. Here's what he wrote to the man, the organizer. I wish to impress, this is his heart and his vision. I wish to impress the public, delegates, who would internationally join the Conference for Culture and Human Spirit in Japan about the necessity of an international movement. 1961, he's living in those little Vangsi Gopal Mandir temple, thinking of the world. This is Prabhupada. Towards this unifying purpose, this is not his letter. Prabhupada, this is from Lilamrita. His vision was the cooperation of the enlightened people of the world would be channeled, although there was no international movement at that stage. Kindly, therefore, do the needful immediately, and give me a chance to speak to the enlightened people of the world the message of human culture from the Vedic literature. I am sure that such news will change the angle of vision of the world's activities. This is Prabhupada's heart. His work was to move thoughtful people and have their hearts changed, and by that, the angle of vision of the world's activities would change. He had that faith, he had that confidence, he had that vision, and much to his surprise, the man answered. Not only the man answered, but he wrote this nice letter, which was found in the trunk where the manuscript was, where he gave his, basically, something that Prabhupada could use to get a passport and a visa, because he didn't have either. So this is to certify that Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, giving his address in case you got, is a bona fide visitor of the Congress for Cultivating Human Spirit, will be held under the auspices of the International Foundation for Cultural Harmony, and it gives the dates, 1961. So this is January, the letter was written, and he's got until May, January, February, March, April, May. Write a book, go ahead, try it. I challenge you. It is understood that lodging and boarding arrangements during the period will be made and paid by us. So please give him a visa and a passport. So he got this nice letter. Fantastic. And what did Prabhupada do? He immediately began composing a book. And the book, as there's another cover of the book was 20,000 words, 50 commentaries. I said 46, but it looks like it's 50. And, it's not lengthy. It was not Bhaktivedanta purports from the Bhagavatam. It's much shorter. And the style is different. It's the scene of nature and the lesson from the scene of nature. Very consistent. But in the course of doing that, he expressed the entire Srimad Bhagavatam masterfully. I get excited speaking about it because it is in fact masterful. 1961, a book that never got published because he didn't have any money to publish the book. In fact, he didn't want it. He was asking the organizer to publish the book. He asked the organizer, I want some paintings drawn. He gave details of the paintings, which was found in the trunk, which Tamal Krishnamurti received, and had an artist 23 years later make the paintings, according to Prabhupada's desire to have paintings. So the paintings were to be made by a traditional artist from the Far East, and 50 illustrations to display. And he wanted them to blow them up and put it on easels and have the people coming to the convention see these paintings, hear the story, read the book. He wanted him to publish the book. And didn't happen. Published the book with all the illustrations. Well, he had vision. He didn't have resource, but he had vision. And there were obstacles. Lots of obstacles. For starters, he didn't have an airfare. Even if that man had published the book and made the paintings. He didn't have the airfare to get to Japan because he didn't have anything. So he went about trying to find the resources. And his message was, I'm a renowned person representing our culture, India. Please make all the arrangements so that I can travel. And here's some of the people he tried to approach. Different government officers, like the Ministry of Scientific Research and Cultural Affairs. He met with the Vice President of India, Dr. Radhakrishna. He met with, potential donors of many kinds of people, introduced him to people, and they weren't willing to help him get his airfare, 3,500 rupees. Phew. The Japanese gentleman, he asked him for the airfare. He couldn't help. No money. So Prabhupada couldn't go. But he wasn't discouraged. If that door is locked, then there's another door that'll open, and he just kept, that was the principle. He was mission-driven, not fruits-driven. Powerful Acharya. Disappointed but not discouraged. So what happened, one of the things that happened, was the Aurobindo Society took parts of that book that he wrote, and in different segments, they, giving credit to Prabhupada, they published the different parts of this book. And then 23 years later, they found the book in a trunk. Prabhupada had already departed. And what to do with this manuscript? The manuscript was given to Tamal Krishna Maharaj, 1984. So it was published, it was written in 1961. 23 years later, 84, there's Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I discussed this with Giridhari Swami, who was also in Hong Kong with Tamal Krishna Maharaj and the Philippines. He contacted, Tamal Krishna Maharaj would always do things the very, very best way. So he found a very talented, renowned, celebrated lady who was very elderly, but she had many wards in a particular style, Gongbi style of painting. And Giridhari Swami said, Tamal Krishna Maharaj he was like the art director. Prabhupada, it was Prabhupada's vision. he was the art director and she was the artist. So every month she would bring paintings, and he would critique the paintings, tell him to add this, change that, something, and she'd go back and come a month later, and they were ended up having 48 illustrations. Prabhupada's original idea was 50. It got down to 48, and then the book was published in Chinese first. Now this book that's now available in languages all over the world, maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago, something like that, in Brazil, the book was translated into Portuguese, and they did what Prabhupada wanted. They had the paintings blown up, put them on easels, had them displayed in the mall, and promoted the book, because it's quite sweet. It's not too high, too intimidating, too preachy, but it has fundamentals in the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a really fantastic book, very, very clever, very masterful book. Next, you're going to see another painting of another title in English, and there's other ones, Now, it's available. It's just right on Vedabase. You could take a look and find it there. Or, because Swavas knew that I was going to be making these presentations, he had the BBT reprinted, so now it's available in a printed form like this from the BBT. Although he wanted to go to Japan even before coming to the USA, and although he wrote the book Light of the Bhagavad especially to preach the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam in Japan, Krishna had a different plan for Srila Prabhupada, sending him first to the USA. His plan wasn't to go and stay in Japan. It was attend the festival and come back. That didn't happen. But the book happened, because our founder Charlie his determination was indomitable. And his followers were also taking energy from his indomitable determination. They did very wonderful things too. Very wonderful things. I just had a conversation sharing on this last point. I had a conversation today with the trial attorney for the Long Island case. Some of you know about it. Some of you may not know about it. It's been in the court system for 19 and a half years. And the trial is about to begin in 6 days. So I spoke with the attorney today. He was interested because I'm going to be one of the witnesses. And one of the other witnesses was Malati. And Malati's role in the Long Island Temple is when there was a problem, I requested her to participate, thinking, she has skills and she's a lady and she might be able to help bring about a solution. So she, in the course of her being interviewed by the trial attorney for the GBC, Malati told a little bit of her story, that when she and the Shamsundar was her husband, so 3 Western, American disciples went to England. They had a very specific focus: spread Krishna consciousness by getting the Beatles to chant Hare Krishna mantra. I mean, they were doing other things, of course, but there was a very, they thought high, like Shamsundar's book, Shoot for the Rhinoceros. So get the Beatles to chant Hare Krishna and the world will chant Hare Krishna. That was their very clear mission. Like Prabhupada had a very clear mission. We, from a little room in Bangsi Gopal Temple, had a very clear vision, and he thought high. And Rupa Goswami, our acharyas do like that. They may act on a simple scale, but they're doing something that has a big vision to it. And Krishna helped them. So in this case, it happened 23 years later. But It's still happening, Phil, from 1984 till today. There's, however many years that is, 40 years later, it's still happening. Because the BBC just reprinted it and so forth and so on. It's now been reprinted in mainland China, and they're reading. Because I spoke on it, so many persons bought the book. Prabhupada's preaching is still going on through his books. As he wrote, I'll live forever in my books. And it's true. So now that we have more complete assembly here, I chose this topic for this evening as a kind of a prime the pump, or an invitation. During the Thanksgiving weekend in Houston, I'm going to have a 16-part seminar that covers the whole book, with all the illustrations and the seeds of nature and the lessons, and the way that Prabhupada put the seeds of nature and drew from the seeds of nature the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. It's quite amazing. My appreciation for Prabhupada, every time I go through, each of the times I've gone through this, it increases, it deepens my appreciation for him as a great, great, great Acharya. Taking very high messages, bringing them down to a level that people that he never knew before can understand and relate. But it's also very high teachings. He was masterful. And the book is wonderful. And you can learn a lot from it. So that's this evening's presentation, Ninth of the Bhagavad. See if there's any discussion. Aren't you glad you came to sit in the front row up here so you could see? You just be patient and somebody will put up their hand. There we go.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, it was so deeply inspiring, this class, Maharaj. Thank you so much. I have a quick question, is that, so since I was just wondering, Prabhupada has published a lot of other books after, 2020, between that years, but is that Prabhupada didn't had a chance to publish this book, or?
The answer is, he had a chance, but it didn't happen. He wrote it to be published, but it didn't happen. It ended up in a trunk. Manuscript ended up in a trunk. Mainly in Leelamrita we hear about his writing of Back to Godhead magazine, while simultaneously writing Srimad Bhagavatam. And the printer was saying, Swamiji, magazines get thrown away, and large books, because they won't be thrown away. He took it to heart. Not that he wasn't already, he was already, but he just took, he shifted gears and was focusing on the Bhagavatam for the English-speaking parts of the world. So while this is going on, in 1961, the first volume was published, first volume of the Canto 1 Bhagavatam, while this is going on.
Sure, Maharaj, thank you.
And 1 year after the volume 3 of Canto 1 was done, he's on a ship with his books.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, when Prabhupada wrote the Light of the Bhagavat, the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam was not yet written, right, Maharaj?
Correct.
So only
his version.
His version, yeah, with the purport and all that. So he only had the verses, and he already had the big picture just from the verses.
Time was separating, as he would say.
Yeah. And another thing I was thinking, he had one trunk that he took along with him to in Jaladuta. So
One trunk or more than one trunk, I don't know, but he had a trunk or more trunks.
So this manuscript didn't make it to
The manuscript was stayed in the trunk
Radha
back
Damodar.
somewhere.
Okay.
Somewhere. I don't know, Radha Damodar, somewhere. Maybe Bangsi Gopal. Maybe, I don't know where. It's a celebrated trunk.
Definitely.
Here's another thing that was found in that trunk, I was told. Or trunks, maybe more than one. Where he kept stuff that, his writings and things that he valued to be for posterity. There was in that trunk or those trunks, there was a document of a lecture, the paper that he gave for the Gandhi Memorial, because Prabhupada was not only a follower, but he was a leader in the Gandhi movement. So when it was time for the Gandhi Memorial service, he was asked to be a keynote speaker or a speaker. And to do that, he wrote a paper. I mean, this is professional, it's standard professional stuff. You're asked to speak something, you write a paper, and it gets circulated. I don't know if it got circulated, but he wrote a paper. And in the paper, he wrote, essentially, the way to honor a great person, Mahatma Gandhi, or any great person, is the tradition is not the best. You build a statue, you name a street after them, you name a building after them, and that's not the best way to honor the person. Great person has a vision of how they would like. This is important for us to understand, how to honor Prabhupada. How to honor a great person is you build a community or a village or a place that resembles or represents the values that they held. Pause. The values of Gandhi were embedded in Bhagavad Gita. Everyone knows he loved Bhagavad Gita. So here's my vision. Here's what those who want to honor Gandhi should do, is create a place where the Gita is revered. And he gave it a name, Gita Nagari. And then he described what Gita Nagari would have in it. This and this and this and that and the other thing, the other thing. It was in a trunk. And sometime when this manuscript was found, that was found. And then, because Prabhupada hadn't said about the Gandhi Memorial paper that he wrote, but when he visited the farm in New York, because then it was called the New York Farm, he gave it a name, Gita Nagari. He didn't say, go find my manuscript in that trunk, and you'll find out what Gita Nagari is supposed to be like. When the devotees found the manuscript during Prabhupada's life, they called it the Gita Nagari prophecy. And then they tried to model Gita Nagari after what Prabhupada wrote. But the principle is a very important principle. If you want to honor a great person, then build a community of people that live according to the values of that great person. I mean, Aurobindo did the same type of thing. And the followers of Aurobindo did the same type of thing, in principle, how to honor him. So, how to honor Prabhupada, or how to honor someone. Anyway, Gita Nagari.
Thank you.
Look at this. It's going to be a good question. Just one request. Don't start with or so. That's a challenge. So, no, I said it. Yeah, what comes next? I'm just helping you be a good public speaker. It's okay? You don't mind. I wouldn't say that to everybody, but you can. You're good. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
That's a good place to start. Don't say so.
I have a question.
You're going to be a great devotee speaker someday. And if you can get past that thing, great. Go ahead. Maharaj, have a question. What's the question? Sorry. What's the question? I got you frozen now. Look at this.
I forgot.
You forgot. It'll come back. It'll come back. I got you panic stricken. Your mom has ESP. She knows what your thought was.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Maharaj, there's one online question.
Okay, I'm ready.
It's from John Randy.
John?
Randy.
Randy. Okay.
If we come to know that our preceptor's preceptor has changed line away from Srila Prabhupada, apparently, going to another sampradaya or something like that, should I still feel obliged to the line of teachings?
You follow the question?
The person is asking if he likes the Prabhupada movement, but they move away from the Gaudiya Sampradaya, move to a different.
They have already done. He's contemplating?
He's contemplating.
Oh.
And then can he still be truthful and follower of Prabhupada?
Yeah. I mean, yes. So that's the person asking this question. Please listen carefully to see if we have captured the question properly. I like Prabhupada. I like his teachings, etc. At the same time, I am contemplating shifting a bit to another teaching, another sampradaya. Can I still be faithful to Prabhupada if I do like that? That basically, is that the question? That's not the question.
Maharaj, he said his preceptor's preceptor has changed line from Srila Prabhupada, apparently. So should he still feel obliged to Srila Prabhupada?
Can I have the phone? Let me see the phone, because I'm having a problem understanding the question. Okay. If we come to know that our preceptor's preceptor has changed line away from Srila Prabhupada, apparently going to some other sampradaya, should I still feel obliged to that line of teachings? Well, that's more clear. That's different than this other idea. So, everyone, one's faith is based upon hearing. I mean, according to the teachings of Rupa Goswami, there's some preliminary faith, and then preliminary faith is nurtured by sadhu sangha. So, if someone has faith in Srila Prabhupada, and the person whom I have been hearing from goes away from Srila Prabhupada, you don't go to that other person that went away from Srila Prabhupada if your faith is in Prabhupada. You stay faithful to Prabhupada. You can be respectful to another person who at a certain point in time helped me get some footing in the bhakti teachings of our sampradaya. And that person who helped you get some footing in the teachings of our sampradaya has gone elsewhere. So be respectful to that person who's gone elsewhere, but you don't go elsewhere. They're on their trajectory, whatever that is, and you're faithful to the founder Acharya of ISKCON and the teachings that he's representing, that is Rupa Goswami and the Goswamis and the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, etc., etc. We stay faithful. So the answer is no. Don't go the way that your preceptor's preceptor went. You just stay with Prabhupada and find persons who can nicely and naturally connect you with Prabhupada. And the message of the disciplic succession in which your Krishna consciousness was nurtured initially from Srila Prabhupada. Okay? Okay. This the same person has got a nice big red heart. You say, you know, the little emoji. I guess he's okay with the answer I gave. Did you remember the question?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Did Prabhupada,
Go ahead. Keep going. I'll excuse you.
did Prabhupada think that, like, he should make, like, another version of, of the Bhagavatam?
No, it's not another version. It's customized. So there we go. So you're a Sunday school teacher. There's different ages of the Sunday school children. There's this age, there's that age, and there's that age. So the teacher, when preparing lessons for this age, that age, or the other age, they customize the teaching for the age. Or someone may be writing for intellectuals, so they write way up here. Bhaktisiddhanta, he wrote way up here. And he wrote way up here, and most people couldn't understand. However, he attracted people who are intellectual, because when they listened carefully to him, they could understand what he was saying. You know, sometimes they didn't agree, but they could understand, wow, he's a very bright person. And their intellects became attracted, and he attracted many intellectuals to his Gaudiya Mat mission. Now, when Prabhupada came to the West, he didn't dumb it down. He just used language that was more accessible to a general audience. The message didn't change, but the manner of addressing the audience changed, because the audience was different. He was speaking to the world. And English was a medium then, and even more so today. That's all over the world. All over the world. I mean, not all over the world, but many, many places in the world. It's accepted language. So he was addressing the world. So because he was addressing, when this book was going to Japan, so he addressed the people of his understanding, scenes of nature, lessons of life drawn from scenes of nature. So he didn't change the message. It is not another Bhagavatam. When you get a copy, someday you'll get a copy and you'll read it and you'll see, oh wow, he's saying really high stuff. But it's the context is scenes of nature. He was masterful. He didn't write another Bhagavatam. He just took the language of the Bhagavatam and made it accessible to people of from the culture that he was addressing. You'll see. The day will come. Someday you read the book and you'll see, wow. He knew his audience. And it's just the Bhagavatam. Wow.
Thank you, Maharaj.
As they say these days, cool, man. Is that language in use in school today too? Okay. Okay. Yes.
Just a quick thing about that Thanksgiving weekend. Thanksgiving weekend is going to be 16
Classes.
on 3 days, 4 days.
4 days.
4 days. Okay. Thank you.
Because Thanksgiving is on a Thursday, so it's going to start a Wednesday night.
Okay.
And then Wednesday night is one class. Then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. That's 4 threes. So that's 12. So maybe it's 13 classes.
Thank you, New Jersey. Thank you, Maharaj. Houston, okay.
Houston. Houston. That's it. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki.